Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to my channel. To carry on with the NAIC sort of looking at results, we're looking at Arceus Umbreon, a deck which has definitely dominated NAIC and been performing pretty well with lots of different avenues to kind of go around exactly the most optional route. So today I'm going to break down all four lists, different table lists that did in fact make some sort of Arceus Umbreon combination in the top 16 at NAIC. So kind of just looking at it, it did pretty well overall. It obviously did get second place by Ian Robb, which is a really good job. It kind of like see exactly the different combinations that go with the Duraludon build, which has definitely become a bit more of a popular one. They even were like the Arceus Umbreon like toolbox deck with the slacking, and then obviously top 16 one with the Arceus and Giratina with a 1/1 line of Umbreon. This is really powerful because Arceus can be used to really set up any of your attackers over there. The amazing Trinity Nova attack, obviously combination with the Star Birth ability, pretty much making sure you can get any of your Pokemon you have out there. And also going to hit a whole range of different weaknesses. Umbreon is really powerful because if you have the three basic energies attached to it, including just one darkness energy, you can obviously hit for the big weakness against Mew VMAX and obviously the Gardevoir EX. Definitely the more prevalent sort of attacking options out there, and obviously having the amazing Dark Signal ability, dusting out any of the opponent's sort of field. So I'm going to pretty much talk to you exactly about my thoughts and feelings about all the lists and exactly why you may play certain copies. So we're going to look right now at the second place list from Ian Robb. And we can see here playing a 4-3 line of Arceus is definitely the more sort of key version. We are definitely seeing a more 4-4 or 4-3 line of these Arceus V-Star because you really value about Trinity Nova attack. You always want to try and get one turn attachment, then going with the turn 2, gain that Trinity Nova. Star Birth is honestly the best V-Star ability, pretty much gain any 2 cards you may want to have, and you have a high count of options to go around the likes of Path to the Peak going around there by playing 3 copies of Lost City. Lost City is definitely becoming a lot more of the more common choice of stadium cards in these sort of lots of decks. It's just to really go around the likes of Super becoming so prevalent out there. You can really get rid of those like one-off techs which you have in Gardevoir sort of matchups, with obviously talking of the likes of Zacian and Gardevoir, the baby one. If you can just get rid of them in a Lost City, you're in a very good position. The 2-2 line of Duraludon is absolutely incredible. It has the highest HP with having 330 HP with amazing ability, which means it's not affected by any Pokemon that have special energies. With the huge amount of potentially the likes of Lugia pretty much doing okay overall, they're very difficult to actually get the big one-hit KO on a Duraludon VMAX. Obviously, you have to have this single strike Urshifu, which is VMAX, which is kind of becoming a bit more popular. Having that Skyscraper also negates the likes of Reversal Energy, which is what some Gardevoir lists do play. Obviously, then doing 220, going through everything, pretty much one-hit KOing pretty much most basic Vs is really strong. And this is when the deck becomes really powerful. A 2-2 line Umbreon VMAX is very strong. Now, you might go, Charlie, we obviously play Umbreon to do Gusting Effect. Why are we playing 3 copies of Boss's Orders still? Well, you're not going to be, there's no like Super Rod, there's no like Poketone, which is back in the day when you had these sort of really powerful abilities, you're just constantly gusting and reusing them. But having Boss's Order is still really good as a disruption option. This, because you play the Dark Signal, means you can have more options later in the game to really gust out any of your opponent's field. Umbreon is really good, especially this gain an extra gusto effect, pretty much bring up a Rolts or any sort of scary sort of Pokemon to happen on the bench, so you can get those big one-hit KOs with Arceus V-Star, which I really like. I think Umbreon is definitely a really good inclusion and kind of seen a lot of increase in popularity in play, especially in the Scarlet and Violet format, and definitely more in the Paldean Evolved. I can honestly see this deck is going to become a lot more popular. Lumineon, Alakazam, and Spiritomb are really good tech Pokemon. Lumineon is kind of gets that Adventurous Discovery or any other disruptive cards like Iona, Boss, or even Judge, because it's really powerful to kind of get any supporter you may want to have. Really, Alakazam is really powerful because it can get those cheeky one-hit KOs or potentially stopping the likes of Gardevoir, kind of getting that extra energy they might need to get the one-hit KO. Alakazam is really powerful because you're not ever really getting those big one-hit KOs at all, so it can really pretty much move around any of the damage counters you have on the opponent on the field. And Spiritomb is pretty much obviously your now Mew answer. We had the likes of Drapion, but now Spiritomb is not just a Mew answer, it shuts down any sort of a basic V Pokemon that have an ability, like Lumineon, like obviously with the likes of Zacian as well. Very popular Pokemon, which are in most sort of decks, and Spiritomb can get that shut off. This deck, obviously, like most Arceus build, is very disruptive. 4 Ionas, 3 Boss, 1 Judge, 1 Path to Peak, and 3 Lost City is definitely the way around it to become that most disruptive possibility. Even though you're not kind of getting those big one-hit KOs constantly all the time, but you can kind of really negate any of the opponent getting any of that setup with the likes of Iona and obviously a handy Boss at times. 2 Adventures Discovery I really enjoy in this list for Ian because you can kind of make sure you can get any of the V Pokemon. This is one of the only decks which really focuses purely on just V Pokemon. So kind of playing a supporter card which gets you your Dryaddon VMAX, your Umbreon VMAX, your Luminion, and any sort of V Pokemon you might potentially need is really, really strong. You do play other sort of draw supporters like the likes of 2 copies of Research. Sometimes you need that really aggressive start, which is really good in the first turn. And Raihan is really powerful because you can pretty much, if a Pokemon gets knocked out, you can attach an energy on from discard pile to any of your Pokemon you have in play, and then search your deck for any one card. This is pretty much so you can it's like a reuse of Starbirth, which is really, really strong. Rest of the item cards are very much what we're used to seeing in most stuff. 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Nest Ball, it's just pretty much to guarantee you get any of the Pokemon you want as quickly as possible. 1 Switch and 1 Escape Rope, the kind of go around the more wild sort of stall route, which has definitely become a lot more popular in these sort of builds and was still very prevalent in NAIC. 1 could be a choice spell I really like. This is a way for you to potentially get that 230 damage with Arceus V-Star, or potentially that big one-hit KO with Dryaddon and Umbreon VMAX. Energy count is very much what we're used to. 4 copies of Double Turbo, 4 Darkness Energy, 4 Metal Energies, and 2 copies of Fighting Energy. Why this sort of amount? Well, you want to really up the Darkness Energies you have in play, because you only need to have 1 copy of Darkness Energy attached to Umbreon. It's really good to have that as a spare sort of copy around there, as well as also kind of making sure you get that big one-hit KO with Umbreon, and need a high count of Metal Energy compared to Fighting Energy, because Dryaddon's attack is 2 Metal and 1 Fighting Energy. Hope this has really helped kind of break down exactly the list here. And if we just look at the other sort of ones here, I'm going to talk to you exactly what they've chosen some of the options here. Here is a little bit different. They play a Luminous Energy in this list here and a Panic Mask. Both of these are very different and really good at the situation. Luminous Energy pretty much can make sure you can attack with Luminion V and put it back straight into the deck and constantly reuse it to get any of your supporters you have in there. Panic Mask I really like here. This is exactly why Gardevoir and Zacian players won't be getting those big one-hit KOs, because they're not really playing these big tour moving options out there. Panic Mask pretty much says if the opponent's attacking you has 40 less HP, the attack does nothing, pretty much stopping them from getting those big one-hit KOs. And Follow is really powerful, pretty much as a way to just discard one of your bench Pokemon V. You could discard your Luminion in play. You could discard one of your heavily damaged Pokemon, which unfortunately may be have been preyed on from the likes of any of the Sableye or the Gardevoir targets in the end. Very sort of similar list of what we have seen here, but playing a lot less of the Disruptive route, but playing a lower count of Iona, Boss's Orders, and we play a higher count of Judge. I think this deck is definitely something to really consider about it if you want to play a more sort of Disruptive route and have that Luminous Energy option. Now, this is this fun Arceus Umbreon sort of toolbox style deck, really focusing on having that Umbreon to kind of be that answer for the Mew likes and Gardevoir, but even sneaks in a 1/1 Pikachu line. Even though you have a pretty decent, okay, so I would say Lost Box of matchup in well with the likes of Radiant Hawlucha, regular Hawlucha, Medicham V, and Alakazam to kind of reround any of the damage counters you have in play. Pikachu kind of gives that lighter option. Not only does it have free retreat, but it can stop the likes of any of the basic Pokemon dealing any damage to it. Have you think about Zacian and also the likes of any of the Lost Box players kind of really focus on just playing basic Pokemon. This Pikachu can really slow down Sableye by them only doing 12 damage a turn, while you pretty much knock out everything you have in play. I mentioned as well, if you play the Medicham, Hawlucha, and Radiant Alakazam combo, this is really powerful because you could just kind of put down loads of damage counters around the whole board and kind of spread it around with Radiant Alakazam, potentially get that extra turn with a Medicham V, or potentially just that extra prize card, which is really, really powerful in the mid-game. Slacking V, even though it has that really annoying ability, which means if your opponent has odd prizes, you can never really get the you can never attack, but you have Spiritomb as well as 1 copy of Path to the Peak to really kind of open up the Slacking V to really have that be able to do that big 260 damage. Even though if you do have 2 Double Turbo, you're going to go down to 220, but this is a really good big powerhouse attacker. Again, they play heavy counts of Disruptive options, 2 copies of Judge, 3 copies of Boss's Orders, and 4 copies of Iona, really valuing how disruptive they can be, and having the likes of 3 copies of Lost City and 1 copy of Path to Peak. I really enjoying this one. Definitely kind of like the more route we've seen in Arceus build. Lost City, I really like in these builds. Like I mentioned, it's your way around the blanked on the name again, the Super Rod, which I really like about it, having that option around it. And 1 career Path to Peak is just really powerful. Another route around Slacking, as well as not having your Spirit. If they knock out your Spiritomb, you still have a way to attack with your Slacking V. Another card as well, which of note, they do play 2 copies of Choice Spell and 1 copy of Water Energy, really valuing that Luminion as an option to just kind of go attack with it and put it back in the decks to constantly be reusing it and not having the likes of Penny or Volo to kind of bring back your Luminion V. So the last deck I want to mention about it is Arceus Giratina with that 1/1 line of Umbreon. Again, focusing a lot more on disruptive options by having 3 copies of Iona and 3 copies of Boss's Orders, and Judge as well. I really like this sort of way. This is really kind of like to negate any of your opponent having a setup, because you play 4 copies of Path to the Peak, really value instead of them to be reusing any of their attackers, really valuing on them not getting any of the setup, slowing down other Arceus decks, other Umbreons, as well as the likes of Duraludon, and of course the Gardevoir decks is really powerful. Even Xianpao kind of gets hit by this deck by playing a heavy count of disruptive cards and Paths to the Peak. They do have a 2/2 Barrel of the 1 Swavet, which is kind of where we're seeing with the draw sort of engine as well. Yes, there are a lot of tech cards in here, but I do like the Umbreon as well, kind of as another option to go around Gardevoir EX, so you can kind of get that big one-hit KO, whereas the likes of Giratina V-Star has to have a Cleansing Gloves attached to it to get that big one-hit KO on that Gardevoir or potentially Mew VMAX. Definitely focusing more on some of the options we have seen by playing 4 copies of Ultra Ball and 4 copies of Nest Ball with 2 Trekking Shoes. A really good sort of draw option you have in here. And again, the 1 copy of Switch and Escape Rope definitely are tools out around the likes of Marwar. And the Sharon's Care, it is really nice. The first time we've seen this in this style of deck, but again, that extra healing which you might need on that Arceus V-Star is really strong. So now we've looked at all of these decks here, kind of talked to you exactly about why each what it kind of goes around. Why is Arceus Umbreon really powerful? Well, if you look at the positive matchups, it has a very good matchup against lots of the board state. Gardevoir and Mew VMAX is exactly the reason why Umbreon has kind of risen to fame. 2 of the biggest decks in the format right now are weak to darkness, and having a Pokemon which guarantees Gusting Effect and getting those big one-hit KOs on them is really powerful. Lugia V-Star, I do think that you have quite an edge to it, even though we do have the likes of Stonejourner and obviously Single Strike, Urshifu. Even though hitting for weakness, you have multiple other attackers which can get those easy KOs, and having the Duraludon out there, meaning sure that they have to use Boss's Orders constantly, which Lugia players normally play only 2 copies of. Lost Box and Xianpao and Arctina, you definitely have a good matchup against all of them. With Lost Box, you can kind of focus more on, if you think it's going to be popular, go around having the Flying Pikachu build to really slow down any of them in play. They are going with the more turbo build, which is where we're seeing with Lost Box, so kind of playing outs around it is really strong. Arctina, you definitely have the more favored version in there because you have that Gusting Effect as well. Even though you can get those big one-hit KOs attached to it, the Arceus Duraludon player can really slow down the player by having that Duraludon out there, making sure they have to play Path to Peak, even though that is the main sort of common build of Arctina, but you have to make them force to get the outs with your multiple disruptive. As I like said here, Xianpao, you definitely have a really good option in around there. Pretty much Lost City in any of their Baxcalibur, if they only have 1 in play, it's really difficult for them to constantly return from there. I definitely think some of its negative matchups will be that Ting Lu and Rapid Strike box. Obviously, we did see Ian lose to Rapid Strike box there, and it kind of, his deck is really built around what the meta is around, going around with it. It's Arceus Umbreon plus any random partner is really strong. For the NAIC, Duraludon was definitely a really good sort of call for it, with the high counts of special energies, as well as definitely a way so difficult to go around it. Ting Lu is definitely going to be a bit of a struggle. Making sure it's shutting down all of the abilities you have in play, it's definitely quite a bit of a worrying factor, but definitely something to really be considering about if you want to be thinking about this deck in the future. So looking at Ian's list, definitely looking at probably the more common build of Arceus Duraludon with Umbreon, I could definitely see that this deck will definitely be part of the meta, and you should be definitely including it in your testing for Worlds. I think Umbreon definitely gives that sort of edge with it. Having that Gusting Effect as well as having a way to play supporter is really good. Basically playing Boss's Orders and Iona on the same turn can really disrupt your opponent and really slow down their setup. Radiant Alakazam has definitely been the biggest surprise factor as a Radiant Pokemon which has really shone this weekend and kind of been around there as probably the most played Radiant Pokemon, which was in the top 8 bracket. So if you haven't got a Radiant Alakazam, definitely try and get them very soon. Definitely one sort of taking factor from these sort of decks here, you want to play high disruptive outs with high counts of Iona, Boss's Orders, and Judge, and playing potentially a split between Lost City and Path to Peak to really help slow down the opponent and making sure they don't have any comebacks in any way. So I hope this has really helped with kind of breaking down exactly why Arceus Umbreon is definitely going to be a threat in the sort of meta game going forward too, and it should definitely be on a radar of testing, because you can see here there were 4 pretty much very different archetypes around here and all had very common goal, and all of them got into the top 16 or higher, which is definitely something to be really concerned about for an Arceus Umbreon player. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, be sure to like and subscribe and comment down below. What build of Umbreon and VMAX will you want to be trying out? I definitely potentially be going with the Arctina with Umbreon, as that has kind of been where I have been with my testing. Don't forget to join the channel, which can really help and benefit the what I could be creating in the future, and it always means a huge amount of support. So thank you so much for those who already have supported the channel. I will see you in a couple of days' time for the next video, and I will see you guys then. Bye for now.